Okay, so I have a slab started. It's relatively thin, just a little bit thinner than your 1/4 inch, because if your mug is really, really thick, it's easier to make a thicker mug at the beginning. So if you're in the beginning stages, don't fret if your piece feels a little bit more sturdy and more stable to be made a little bit on the thicker side. It's totally fine. I think we all start there at some point. So this is a little bit on the thinner side. I'm going to smooth this out. I'm going to roll some texture into this. And I've laid it out so I know that my pattern, which is nothing more than an opened up coffee coat, like the cardboard cozy or koozie, whatever they call them, that comes with your coffee. So you can do that with the actual coffee cup too and make an actual tumbler. These two are a together kind of deal. So I got a 2-for-1 on this. Kind of fun. And you can tell they're pretty worn. It's a pretty easy way to make a mug and a tumbler. So I'm going to lay that there so I know where I want my pattern to go. Right? So I'm going to roll out some texture. And let's see, I'm just going to go with this one that's just got a little bit of lines back and forth. So when I created this, I literally just with my X-Acto knife started going in one direction and a little bit. So they're multi-directional almost. Sometimes I wasn't even paying attention, I was just tapping it. But it makes a pretty cool looking pattern. And I'm going to leave a little line in between and push relatively firm. I don't want to squish it too thin, but I want there to be at least a little bit of an indentation leaving a mark. So, and I kind of want them to fan in the same direction. And if it's thicker at the top, that's fine. All right. So now that I have those, I'm going to come back and really just lightly roll this on that top surface. All right. I want to make sure it doesn't stick, so I kind of pop it back up. I'm going to lay my template back down. And I'm going to cut it out with my super dull X-Acto knife. I'm going to lift up, and so now I have my pattern ready. With this clay so thin, you could easily come in and cut, but we're just going to compress that edge down. So with my finger, I'm going to come in and compress this edge. And that's where I'm going to score. That'll be that edge. And if I flip it over and do the same to this side, I'll have the angles to match. So now I'm going to lightly rub out, just by pushing the roller, it makes canvas marks again into the back. I'm just going to really lightly squeegee that top of that surface off to get rid of those marks. And I don't want to reinforce the canvas marks to be on the front. So I'm just really lightly coming in with that. I'm going to flip this back over, and I want to slightly address the lip while I have it flat. I can come in with my finger and round that out. All right, so I'm going to smooth that back out. And now I'm going to take my scoring rib that I have no idea what it is. Oh, there it is. You know how ceramic tool, Bermuda Triangle over there, everything seems to get lost there. So I'm going to score both those spots lightly with just a little bit of water, come back. Then I'm going to stand it up and around it. And overlap that join. Put my hand all the way down into the bottom and push on the outside. I can use that roller to push in texture to seal that seam from the outside. So now I have the seam on the inside that, can you see that? Yep, there you can. Then I'm going to smooth out with, I'm going to use my brush. So I'm going to cup the outside where that seam is, and I'm going to push against the palm of my hand to create that join in there. And so the seam on the inside is laid like this, so I'm brushing this way. So if the clay is angling that way, that's the way that I'm kind of pushing to kind of stretch that over. So they kind of become one a little bit better. Okay. So now we have the basic cylinder shape for our mug. I'm going to take my fingers and go around. Sometimes easier to do this on a little turnstile or a little Lazy Susan. Just bring this up. Get my fingers. So where the seam landed, it has like this little niche. And if you don't like it, just come in and kind of hold your X-Acto knife flat and start to trace a line. And you can just come in, keep coming in, and then just cut that off. Alright, so I'm going to let this set up just a little bit before I move on to the next step, and that's going to be attaching the bottom. So let's go ahead, break away for a little bit, and then we'll come right back when it's ready. Alright. Alright, so it's set for a few minutes, and I can kind of pick it up and it can still retain its shape. Before it was still a little bit too soggy. So it's a little bit more firm. And I have another slab, relatively thin, about the same thickness, maybe just a little bit thicker. So it's at bottom because that's what's going to take the abuse when you sit it down on the table. I'm going to smooth out both sides. Smooth. If you have a stamp with your name, you can go ahead and stamp this now, or if you write your name in the bottom, you can write your name later, or if you feel ever so moved, you can do it now. I don't know where my little name stamp is, so we'll just sign it later. Alright, so place this right on top. And what I'm going to do with my needle tool, I am going to just slightly make a little line on the inside. Right? So this becomes the inside, and this line is where it's going to attach. I don't want to score so much that my scoring kind of bleeds into the interior bottom of that piece. So I want to be relatively cautious about doing this. And then I'm going to add my water. Don't use anything other than water. Some folks like the whole magic slip or vinegar water. And then so I'm going to place this back on top and wiggle back and forth. Get that to stick. So it should lift the whole thing up. That's how I know it's pretty stuck on there. So I'm going to take my water over here. Let's get my water with my little sponge in there. And use my brush as an extension of my finger that I can't get into that little crevice down there. I really just want to round that out, whoops, and be nice with it. I have a really clean round end of my brush. I'll also take this and just kind of rub it around in there. I don't want to make a divot or anything in the bottom because it's easy to push where the floor and the wall meet, and then it almost makes like a little moat on the inside, which is a really, prime place for coffee to really stick. So I'm going to trace around really lightly once around, once again. And then second time around, kind of go all the way down to the canvas underneath. I angle inward just a little bit. And then I'll peel that away. So now I have that bottom on there. And I want to make sure that it sticks. So I have a little like wooden paddle spatula, and I'm just going to rotate on that corner. So that corner meets, if that corner is like here, I'm tapping inward, not straight down and not here, but just to round out that edge. And then once I have that rounded just a little bit, now I'm going to kind of pat flat. I like there to be a little bit of a lip up. So now I'm kind of tapping away on that edge. Just drawing it out just a little bit. So you can see it starts to give a little rolled edge. And now I'm going to come back and just roll and kind of tuck that up a little bit. Not too much. It just helps to give it a little lift on the table, so it doesn't look like the little mug has just grown out of the bottom. Of course, if you hear rustling around back there, two of my cats are fighting over a box because Amazon doesn't bring enough of them, so they have to fight over the same one, apparently. And now I'm just going to take my thumb really lightly and just kind of squish up. Rock that around. Flatten that out. And then with the palm of my hand, I'm just going to tap in a little bit, just to kind of give it a little lift up under there. And there we go. There's the base for our hand-built mug. And there we go. So now we got to think about handles. So I want my handle to have relatively the same texture, but I don't necessarily need the texture to match perfectly. But it needs to at least talk to one another. Oh, here comes little mama. A little kitty cat. Oh, there she goes. I think you can see her paw a little bit. Make an appearance. She's like, love on me. I guess this is like the equivalent of like Zoom meetings where your kids are screaming in the background. All right, so I'm going to break away and set up for a handle. I am using a relatively thicker piece of leftover clay that was cut off of making the actual mug itself. I'm going to come in and use a straight edge and cut. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we always want to use stuff that's non-porous. So this seems very opposite of what we normally would do by using this upside down tray. But it's how I fake pull a handle. So I like to we have granite top counters at the studio, and I just lay it right on top of there, put a little bit of water down, lay it down, get my sponge, turn it into a little bit of like a taco shell, fold it over, and then lift up and flip it over. And then I can come in and smooth out the edges so those edges aren't sharp. You don't want to pick up something that's got a sharp edge. Just is not comfortable. And then you can kind of fake pull. You can see my hands just kind of straight pull. I'm gonna cut that off right at where that mark is showing. There was an air bubble, so we'll get rid of that. So now I have my clay. I like to turn it away from me so as side view it starts to just roll. And then I will leave it. I want to make sure it's straight this way and then it has a nice little shape that way. And then I will set this up and let it dry just a little bit so then I can cut, and I'll show you how I attach it once it dries a little bit. We need to let it firm up. So we'll stop there and then we'll come back once it's dry and we will attach the handle. Okay, so let the handle set up a bit. It can kind of stand up on its own. Still a little soft because I want to be able to attach it. When I'm looking at my cup, I'm going to try and find the spot where I want my handle. And I'm usually going to put it where that seam line is, so it kind of covers it a little bit. From where I'm standing, I'm going to angle over and I'm going to look. But this gives you a chance to kind of hold it up and see where you want the handle. See, too small. And then you can play and kind of adjust and see you want it a little bit more that way, a little bit more up and down. So I'm going to do this, and I like to use the credit card because if there's a little bend in the shape of the side profile, I can mimic that on my handle. So I'm going to come down, make a line, and then come over here. Got to turn into this a little bit more. And I can make my line there too. So I'm going to cut straight down with my X-Acto blade. And I'm going to go a little bit larger than what I have marked. So I have wiggle room, right? I'm going to take and lay it on my finger and roll down. So now it creates this little lip that pops down. And just slightly give it a little round curve so it has a place to stick. I'm going to do the same down here. I'm going to push down. That shape back. And then I'm going to look at the profile that I have. See if I like it. See if it feels right. So we're going to go right there for today. So, come in, score. I prefer scoring with my X-Acto knife. I know it takes a lot longer. Some people like to, when it comes to delicate stuff like this. If it's bigger things, that I'm constructing, like the seam, of course I'll go straight to the scoring rib. But I tend to, for the smaller intricate things, I'm going to go for the X-Acto knife probably every time. So, okay, so angle that back. And I'm just going to wiggle it back and forth and lift up. Now I have my marks on my cup, so I know where to score, 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 slip, slip, slip. So a little dot, a little drop. Now lay that back down, and because I have that knot, that little lip that I kind of created by pushing it down with my finger, I have a place to push down. And even if I can't get my finger in there, I can get a tool in there to kind of push that down. I don't want to push too much. Just want to make sure it's attached without distorting it. So I'm going to push down, hand on the inside, hand on the outside, squeezing together, squeezing here. And then once I know that I have it attached, I'm going to lift up just a little bit right there. And make sure it looks relatively even. And come back in and just add a little bit of that texture to that bottom. I don't really need the texture on the handle. Make sure you can get your hands in there. If you can't get your hands in there before it's fired, you're definitely not going to get them in there afterwards. Remember, your clay shrinks. All right, so there we go. Nice little coffee cup, hand built. There we go. Round it out. Make sure if you have a round, small little terracotta pot, a lot of times people push that down to kind of re-get it into the round. I'm kind of not so worried about it. Nothing else is really perfectly round or perfect on any of this. It's very wobbly by nature, intended wobble. Just clean up my edges, clean up the handle. And I'll call that a mug. All right, so we'll leave it at that.